Okay, wonderful. We're going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Alicia Brewster, and I'm the program director here at Sustaining Way. I'm going to serve as your host tonight. Sustaining Way is an interfaith nonprofit that educates, demonstrates, and collaborates to empower South Carolina communities to cultivate a sustainable and equitable future. Our base of operations and our educational center is located in Nicholtown. And at the end of tonight's discussion, we'll actually have a virtual tour of our location and our flagship project, Annie's House. Everything that we do here at Sustaining Way is in an effort to care for people and the environment in a way that will be able to maintain it and sustain it. We're very grateful that you are here with us as we discuss housing challenges and opportunities in Nicholtown, as we know that this is extremely important and one of the major issues that many Nicholtown residents are discussing today. So at this time, I would like to remind everyone about how Zoom works. So if you take your mouse or use your trackpad, you're able to get some options. One of the options is to be able to chat. So if you do have a comment, or again, when you're coming in, if you will, let us know who you are. If you're in the Nicholtown area, if you'll let us know that you're a Nicholtown resident. If you are with an organization, a community organization, if you'll let us know that organization's name. Also, we ask that you will type in questions. During the session, we will have plenty of time for us to be able to have open discussion. But if there are questions or comments that you have during our talk with our panelists, then please do go ahead and begin typing in your questions in the chat box. Also, I want to remind everyone that you can mute yourself. So if you are not speaking at the time, if you will, please mute yourself. And also, if you need to step away, or if you have a time when you need to hide what's going on in your background, that you can stop your video at any time if need be. So at this time, we'll go ahead and ask our participants to go ahead and mute if you're coming into the room. If you will mute yourself, because we are going to start by opening with a moment of silence. And this evening, I ask you to join me in pausing, reflecting, praying, mourning, and honoring all those we've lost to COVID-19, as well as those we've lost to domestic terror and systemic injustices. Thank you. Now, this time, I want to introduce our team. Sustaining Way has a wonderful group of individuals who come together and use their gifts and their talents each day to support this organization. And I want to recognize everyone who is with us today, beginning with our founder and executive director, Rick Joy. So Rick, if you would like to say anything at this time. Not sure if you're working on some troubleshooting.
Yeah, I was troubleshooting a little bit, but
okay.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you all. Obviously, this is an important topic for all of us, and I really appreciate you guys joining.
Thank you. Also want to recognize Sophia. Sophia is doing a lot of the behind the scenes this evening, so thank you so much for supporting us. She's our research and marketing specialist. Also, I want to recognize Michelle. And as I go around, if you will say hello in that way, because there are several people on the screen so that everybody knows who you are. So I'll go back. I'm sorry. Sophia, if you'll wave your hands so everybody knows who you are. Thank you again for all that you're doing. Also, I think I saw Michelle. Okay, Michelle and Amber are together.
This is easier, otherwise you're gonna get nasty feedback. So hi.
Hi, Michelle. Michelle is our Sustainability Education Coordinator, and she's also helping out today. And next to Michelle, we have Amber, who does a wonderful job as well. She's our Community Engagement Intern, a Furman student. So Amber, if you'll wave to everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. Also, I want to recognize our newest member of the team, Oscar Bennett. And Oscar, if you'll wave to everyone, Oscar is our fresh day one. Today is his first day on the job. He's our executive coordinator. So glad that you're able to be with us today. Also, I want to recognize Ashton Reed. She is our education intern. So Ashton, if you will wave to everyone. And I believe I saw a couple of our board members join. It looks like Sylvia. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for bearing with us and for joining us today. Sylvia Palmer is one of our board members. And of course, she is a Nicholtown resident. So she is a wealth of knowledge and a huge support of our organization. And finally, I think I saw Michael Brown is with us today. Michael Brown is our vice chair, and also he steps up to really serve in any capacity that we ask. So we ask a lot of them. So thank you so much, Michael, for being with us today. Did I miss any board members? I think I missed a team member, Charlotte Ward. Charlotte Ward does a fantastic job with our marketing. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for being here.
No worries.
Charlotte,
Thank you.
Thank you she did a lot of the behind the scenes as well. Thank you for all of your work. Did I miss anyone? Any of our team members or board members? All right. Looks like I have everyone. Well, what we don't know though is who all of our guests are today. So if you have not already done so, if you will, put your name in the chat box, as well as letting us know if you're a Nicholtown resident. And if you're not a Nicholtown resident, let us know how you found out about this event. And if you are with an organization, especially those who are dealing with housing, if you will let us know that you are a housing resource in our community, so that we can make sure that we touch on that at some point during our discussion this evening. Thank you for putting your information in for us. Thank you, Sean, for being here. And I see Sierra Kilgore. Thank you for being here as well. Well, I want to quickly frame why we're here today. I, as mentioned earlier, am the program director, and I've been with Sustaining Way now for 6 months. And as I got started, I realized that the first thing I needed to know is what is in this community, meaning what are the resources in the community, as well as who are the people in the community. And so as much as possible, I sought out to determine what the resources were in the community, as well as who lived in the community. And so one of the first people I would have the pleasure of getting to know and building a relationship with was Alan Mitchell. Alan is the Neighborhood Association president. And in a discussion with Alan, I learned that one of the most pressing issues in this community that he was hearing from community members was causing lots of issues was gentrification. And so at that point, we knew that that was something Sustaining Way, knew that was something that we needed to be able to work in the community, have a discussion around. And so we are here today because of Alan mentioning that this was one of the major issues in the community. Also, some of you may remember that last year, about a year or so ago, that United Way, along with Furman University, teamed up to examine where Greenville's poverty is and whether life has improved for those who are living in poverty. And from that research, there was a wonderful heat map that was developed to show the trends in housing over the past 30 years or so. And it showed that rather than lives improving, that for many people in Greenville, their lives were actually not as good as it was 20 or 30 years ago. And so today, we are going to look at how the impact of gentrification and housing costs and some of the other challenges that Nicholtown residents play into this thought, and also the study that was done by United Way, and by Furman University researchers. So we are going to kick off with kind of an introduction from one of our panelists who's here today, who will give us a little bit of a history about African Americans and housing and some of the challenges that African Americans especially have had with housing over the years. And then we'll also hear from three panelists who I'll introduce now, as a matter of fact. So our first panelist is Jalen Elrod. And Jalen, if you'll wave your hand for everyone to see who you are. Jalen is a community organizer, and he's a fifth-generation Greenvillian. If you have not already seen, there is a wonderful piece that features Jalen that was in the Greenville News. You can still find it on Greenville Online. He's a member of the Community Remembrance Project, a local coalition partnered with the Equal Justice Initiative to honor victims of racial terror lynchings in Greenville County. He is the former first vice chair of the Greenville County Democratic Party. Thank you so much, Jalen, for agreeing to be one of our panelists this evening. We also have Dorothy Dowe, who's here with us. She's originally from New York City, but Dorothy is a 30-year resident of Greenville, and she has invested in the Greenville community through service on numerous boards, including the City of Greenville's Public Safety Citizen Review Board, Pleasant Valley Connection and the League of Women Voters, as well as leading PTA and community organizations for the past 20 years. Dorothy holds a BS in Mechanical Engineering from Duke University, a Master's of Business Administration from the USC Darla Moore School of Business, and a Professional Engineering license from the state of in industrial manufacturing, and later transitioned her career to owning 2 small businesses in academic consulting, and she now serves as the director of her own consulting firm. Dorothy also serves as an at-large representative for the City of Greenville. She's committed to ensuring Greenville is a place where citizens are actively engaged in the decisions that affect them, improving access to affordable housing and transportation, and managing growth to maximize Greenville's potential while maintaining a strong commitment to community and quality of life. Dorothy and her husband, Steve, have 2 grown children. We also have Alan Mitchell again. Alan Mitchell is the Nicholtown Neighborhood Association president. He's also a seasoned professional in the fields of architecture, construction, and facilities management. And he currently is the owner of Mitchell Construction Systems, where he provides management consultant services. He has a degree in architecture and has extensive experience in construction, urban planning, finance, and facility management. Having grown up in Greenville and in Nicholtown, he left to pursue educational opportunities and experiences throughout the world. Now he has brought that expertise back to share with all of us. He has been an active member of Toastmasters since 2012 and recently retired from Prisma Health. Today, he'll be sharing some of his insights about the impact of gentrification in his neighborhood, Nicholtown. We also have DJ Polite with us, who's going to open us up. DJ is a PhD candidate at USC, working on his dissertation topic that looks primarily at the mutually reinforcing growth of U.S. Jim Crow policies and empire in the Caribbean, particularly in Puerto Rico. He explores the ways that the solidification of both relied on each other and cemented secondary citizenship status for African Americans, Puerto Ricans, and especially the women of both of those groups. So we're actually going to open up with DJ, who will present on the historical challenges of home ownership and housing for African Americans. So thank you again, DJ, and all of our panelists for being here. And I won't forget that all of you really are going to be a part of this discussion. We will have a few minutes for each of our panelists to be able to share about opportunities and challenges. And then we're going to spend a lot of time really opened up for the community to be able to share the challenges as well as the opportunities that they see in the community, as well as their vision for Nicholtown. So DJ, thank you again for being here.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute myself, but again, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for everyone else for joining. And yes, you might be wondering, it's like, wait, I know she was talking a lot about empire and Jim Crow and Puerto Rico, and what does that have to do with housing, right? Um, when I think about a lot of my research and how it really touches housing, is this question of belonging and power. And that is absolutely embedded in that question of housing. And when I think about housing, it really is about three things in particular: wealth, who is allowed to access it, or who is allowed to amass it and build it; power, who can, again, wield it, whether it be political or social power to get what they want; and belonging, both who is supposed to belong, who is celebrated for belonging, and whose presence is tolerated. And that is a question that applies both to home ownership, but also to renting and public housing and stuff of that nature. I think about a couple of years ago when I was teaching in a classroom at University of South Carolina. We had just gotten through World War II. And this South Carolina, there's many, many veterans here in South Carolina. And I remember asking my students, how many of you had a grandparent that fought in World War II? Most of them, like about a third of my class raised their head. And I was like, cool, that's really great. So did mine. How many of you grew up in your grandparents' home or visiting your grandparents' home? Everyone who had raised their hand again. And I said, cool, my grandfather never got a home. And that really is a question of the GI Bill, right? The GI Bill was one aspect of where many veterans coming back from World War II could use that GI Bill, their veterans benefits, to either go to school, pay for education, build the middle class, buy homes. And we know that for many African American families, for many reasons, whether it be in the US South, Jim Crow segregation, they couldn't access many of those educational institutions, and for many regards, segregation of housing, that we gave an entire generation of individuals the opportunity to jumpstart them out of the working class to the middle class, white Americans. And for many Black Americans, they did not get that same kind of right. They didn't get to access the rights that were due to them. They were deprived of it. And so we think about that amassing of wealth over time through government helping some and blocking others, predominantly African Americans, from accessing what was supposed to be theirs, from accessing that foothold into the middle class. That's one example. But there are several. You know, as a historian, I'm always going to probably drop a name of a book. So if you want to get back to it later, I'll probably drop it in the chat. I'll do that as well. There's another book by Rhonda Williams called The Politics of Public Housing. And if she really looks at, in there, public housing in Baltimore from the New Deal era to about the 90s. And what she explores there is the New Deal, again, a New Deal, setting a new standard for what was supposed to be the standard for life in America for all American citizens. And through the New Deal, established public housing, the right to decent housing, as something that should be entitled to all Americans. And initially, that kind of was true, kind of. But here's the thing. What she shows is that over the decades, what was at the time actually federally invested public housing for people across racial lines actually diminished the more African Americans got into public housing, and specifically the more poorer African Americans got into public housing. The more that happened, the more public housing was seen less as a right and more as an entitlement, as something that was a handout. And that happens time and time and time again in history of housing, but also most public services. The more African Americans, the more poor African Americans access it, the more that thing is stigmatized, the more that is demonized, the more this is something that we don't want to invest in. This is not a right anymore. This is something that we want to remove funding from, or we want to apply moral boundaries to. And so, you know, she looks at that, and, you know, one of the things that I think about in my research is when we should probably also always care about what happens in our colonial territories like Puerto Rico, because what happens out in Puerto Rico sometimes has its way of finding its way to African American communities. For example, in the 1990s, when the HOPE program was pushed through by the federal government, the idea that we can privatize public housing, and that the idea that private management of public housing would be a boon to the residents who live there. Guess where that happened first? Oh, Puerto Rico. And once that was happening in Puerto Rico, many people who were in charge of public housing or on those committees went there and said, whoa, you know, this idea of privatizing public housing is a great idea. Did they ask public residents who live there? No. Did they ask them how they would work? No. Did they ask them what they needed? In many cases, what they were saying is we actually need social services. They said, no, we don't need to ask them. We know that we just need, it would just be better for them to transition this public right for decent housing from the public sector to the private sector. And I'll drop the name of some of these other books that I'm kind of referencing as I'm talking through. But these questions of housing, whether it be the amassing of homeownership through GI bills, whether it be who can access public housing and how much the government wants to fund it or not fund it at all, or transition it from public to private management. You know, these are all things about who is supposed to be there, who is development for, who are cities for, who belongs and whose presence is merely tolerated. And that question is clearly an issue of gentrification. When you're developing new lands, who is meant to be there, who is allowed to be there, who is welcomed and praised and invited to be there, to be the face of a city, to be the face of a community, to be the face of a neighborhood, and whose presence is tolerated until it can no longer be there. But I'm going to drop a lot of links in there into the chat. If people have further questions, feel free to ask me, and I'm going to let the other panelists jump in and continue the conversation.
Thank you, DJ, for opening us up with some of the historical concepts and information really about the inequities that came out of policies and practices, and where we are here today with the challenge of individuals having challenges really being able to stay in their communities or being able to find, and from Sustaining Way's point of view, our goal is for people to be provided with what they need to be cared for in an affordable way, but also in a way that also cares for the environment. And so thank you for kind of setting us up with some of the practices that led to the inequality and the lack of access for African Americans and lack of home ownership for many African Americans because of the lack of wealth and also access to capital. So
if I can just add one more thing, I'm sorry, I'll be really remiss to miss this and just take 5 more seconds. When we think about homeownership specifically, it is important to note that now, this was pre-COVID actually, the rate of African American homeownership was at a 50-year low as it was before the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968. So what does that show you about policy? That this policy that was supposed to increase African American homeownership, now we're pretty much back to square one where it was before it was even passed. So
thank you for pointing that out. So today, we asked that question in Nicholtown: how do we offer safe, sustainable homes for all in Nicholtown? Our goal really is for community members, as well as we're here today, to better understand the concerns that community members have around gentrification and housing insecurities. And we hope to share some of the community resources also that are here. But we know that it's the community resources that are in our community are important, but it doesn't answer the whole, it doesn't solve the whole problem. There are also policies and practices that also must be addressed, as well as education for all of us really, on both ways, for those of us who are working on the issue of housing, to be able to hear from community members, as well as community members being able to hear about what resources are available and what they need to do to access those resources. So thank you again, DJ, for opening us up. Now, this time, I want to ask all of our panelists if they will talk about the challenges that they have either personally experienced or that have been shared by Nicholtown residents. And so I want to ask Dorothy if you will begin by sharing some of the challenges that you are hearing or have experienced by Nicholtown residents.
Well, that's a great question. The first thing I heard about early on was people, a common practice of people being displaced from their home due to high property taxes. And this wouldn't be unique to Nicholtown. This is very prevalent in West Greenville, really all over. That is one thing to address. That's a topic unto itself. So what do your property taxes do? What do they mean? How can they grow? What are they comprised of? And something we can talk about if we get to that. The second thing that is probably more prevalent, I believe, in Nicholtown than in other predominantly Black communities is homes that are sold by families when maybe the main family member living there passes away. The home is sold for a low price to a developer, to an individual who puts a little bit of money into it and jacks up the price and resells it. So what's happening is that family then has lost that house, and they have not received a fair price for it, likely. And the money that they were given, if there are any members of the family still living there that wanted to stay in Nicholtown, the money they were given would not allow them to live in Nicholtown. So they're displaced from the neighborhood. So those two things are prevalent problems in Nicholtown. One challenge I just see looking at the map is access to land to build more affordable housing. I think, there are lots here and there, but there aren't wide swatches that I see. There is a project going on that we can talk about at Summer Hall, but to me, the first goal is to have people who live in Nicholtown in a house, stay in that house. So what do we have to do to keep them there? If it's home rehab, if it's making sure they're not being overcharged on their property taxes, if it's making sure the family has a will to make sure that house stays in that family as the owner would want it to do, those are some things to hit early on. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit per se.
Thank you, Dorothy. And I do invite all of you to type into the chat box as well. If you are experiencing challenges or know about challenges that people have shared with you, to accessing housing, to being able to remain in their homes in Nicholtown, if you will share those in the chat box, we will address those after we hear from our panelists. Thank you again, Dorothy, for opening up. So Alan, can you share some of the things that you have heard from the community, challenges that residents are experiencing?
Yes, I've actually heard some of the same things that Dorothy has heard. And I've heard people very frustrated because they not only no longer have a house that is in the family name or that they can own, but now it's hard to find a place that they can afford to rent because the property is listed as affordable housing is not really affordable housing. When we look at the national guidelines for affordable housing, we're talking about a monthly rent that is somewhere around $540 to $600 a month. And you can't rent that unit now and call it affordable. The national guidelines also say that you should spend about 30% of your income on housing. And if you look at the 540, and if that's 30% of your income, you're looking at about $1,700, $1,800 a month. It's not that much. So the people that I've talked with have said basically that they're looking for places to rent, but they can't find places to rent. And then when they want to purchase a place, that's even worse, because now, as Dorothy was saying, that place is no longer a reasonable price because a developer has come in, put a little bit of money into it, and sold it or flipped it, and now it is at a much higher price. So that's a difficult challenge for many of the people that I've talked with.
Thank you, Alan, for sharing. And let's see, we did have a couple of questions. I just want to remind you that if you have questions or if you have any comments about challenges that you're experiencing or have heard about, please do continue to put those into the chat box. So Jalen, we would love to hear from you. So what are some of the things that you have heard or have experienced in Nicholtown?
Thanks for having me on. I'd like to start off the conversation by saying I'm not personally from Nicholtown. My family, we're from West Greenville, but I've had family that lived on Beechwood and on Skyland. Grew up playing basketball over there at Skyland Park when I would visit my cousin about 20 years ago. And it's interesting that we're having this conversation. Today I sat and talked for about an hour with a lady named Margaret Majunkin, who lives in Nicholtown. She called me because her and a group of seniors wanted to do something about the gentrification that was happening. And they really want to see the community remain not as it is, but improve for the people who have long lived there, Black folks. And she was and I told her that many of us want to move back into Black communities like Nicholtown, but at the rates that the property and the rates that the houses are going up is just completely unaffordable. I was looking at some houses in Nicholtown on Skyland, and some of these houses were $300,000, which is incredible. Because when my family was living there, these the same house might have been worth $80,000 tops on a good day. So really what I'm seeing in Nicholtown and what we're seeing through other Black communities is an erasure of history and of culture. I'm so thankful for DJ Polite because he really got into the fact that a lot of the housing segregation in the United States was done purposefully. And we're dealing with the generational ramifications of that injustice. I tell people that gentrification is this 21st century housing segregation. And the fact that we lived in Nicholtown, we lived in West Greenville on Southern Side, Greenline, and other Black communities is that we couldn't live anywhere else. Folks wouldn't let us live anywhere else. So we had to preserve that history and that legacy. And it's been passed on to us from those who fought for us and marched for us and endured indignities we can scarcely imagine so we could have a better life. So when we look at this issue of gentrification, not just in Nicholtown, but of affordable housing, I view it as a fight that I have to wage on behalf of those who went before me. And, you know, I'm very vocal about the fact that I don't think the powers that be do enough. Those who are on city council don't do enough. Those who are on county council don't do enough. Those at the and in the state legislature don't do enough. So I really feel that it's incumbent upon all of us who care about this injustice to call it what it is, racial housing segregation, and to take the steps that we need to preserve these communities and restore them and perpetuate that history and that legacy.
Thank you, Jalen. And at this time, we want to open it up to you. So many of you have mentioned that you are Nicholtown residents. We want to hear, what are the challenges? I don't know if we had anything in the chat box already, but.
We have one from Susan McLarty. Are there policies at the state level regarding heirs property that we can work to address? So if anyone knows anything about like policies that we could probably put into the state level.
Well, I might take that one. There could be, but I would much rather battle them at home then try to make change. I mean, I'm all for trying to make change at the state level, but I'd like to start out with making sure that the whole community knows about those policies and takes responsibility for their own situation to protect themselves. So in the issue of the heirs policies, know them, make sure you have a will, know what happens to your house if you don't. And that is an easy thing for us as a city to help educate on, to facilitate, and make happen. And Al and I have talked about that several times now, and we can certainly work towards that. Changing it at the state level takes advocacy over time. You know, it can always be tried, but I'd rather address the immediate, I'd rather address it at home as we are able to in the short term.
Thank you for
as an example, what happens is in the absence of a will, if you are married, but estranged from your spouse, in the absence of a will, your home will go to that spouse. So, you know, you could have not, you know, you could have been estranged for 10 years, but in the absence of a will, and not that person could be long gone, but in the absence of a will saying what should happen to your home, what you want to happen to your home, that home will go to this estranged spouse. Similarly, if there wasn't a spouse, it would go to the eldest child. That might not be who you want it to go to. So, you know, I think the point is that if you are a homeowner, know that it's your decision who your house goes to upon your passing away, and have a will to state that.
Thank you. Thank you both. Susan, thank you for bringing that question up. Michelle, do we have other questions about challenges around housing?
No other questions, but Tina brought up a point about hearing that while it's no longer legal, like some Nicholtown residents had deed restriction covenants barring ownership for African Americans. I guess that's something that's happened across the country, but I think most of the comments have been links to resources, things like that.
Not legal anymore.
Not legal anymore.
No.
Any other comments? If you have a comment or a concern.
So
well, one of my concerns, I've been a lifelong resident in Nicholtown, moved away for my marriage years, for 25 years. But I live in the house I was born in, home house. And I know that there are areas of the country where communities who are Black, historically Black, have created land banking where the residents in the neighborhood buy land that children don't want to pay the taxes on, and that their parents lived in, and they live all over the country, so they care nothing about saving the house in the home neighborhood anymore. And so those are houses that developers are coming in and getting off of tax sales, because nobody in the family wants to pay taxes, because one person doesn't want to pay the taxes when 4 other people don't want to pay anything, but yet they want to maintain ownership. And that has created a very serious problem, and a reason why a lot of our homes in this developed part of the country are lost to developers. It's because families are not together on saving the home. And that's something we need to work on, educating our people about the value of owning property. And for that very reason, my daughter bought all the land that my parents left, so that we wouldn't have to worry about the problem of 15 different first cousins trying to make a decision on who's going to pay the taxes and who owns the land. So, you know, if you've got one reliable child in the community, in the family, everybody else should just go ahead and sell to that person and at least have it maintained, rather than nobody pay and then they lose it for taxes. It's ridiculous. I think it's just an educational piece that needs to be shared and taught on a regular basis as our children are growing up. The value of owning property.
And
thank you for bringing up
that's a great point. That the land trust concept is very solid, being used in, there's a Sterling Land Trust, I'm sure you're aware. West Greenville is using it. It is a great model. I would love to see Nicholtown come together and form such a group. You know, I think the people who live in the community know best what properties could be at risk. And I know the housing fund, the Greenville Housing Fund, which is the vehicle that the city uses for funding affordable housing, is very interested in partnering on that. You know, that would be awesome. If we could get that going, you know, Alan and I have talked about it and have a community-based group that recognizes the houses that are vulnerable and helps communicate with the housing fund on, you know, where they are and what we can do to keep them in within the community ownership.
Exactly. Because the scary thing right now is we have organizations that are nonprofit builders that will build low-income houses. But keep in mind, there is an agreement that says within 15, 20 years, those houses are low income now. In 15, 20 years, they can be sold at market value. So the people who are living in those houses now for 15, 20 years, they're locked into affordable housing. But when that 15th or 20th year comes around, they'll have nowhere to go. And there'll be no houses that are affordable in that range. And, you know, we've got communities like Farmburg Street, Nicholtown, West Greenville, where people are living in those type homes. And they're young enough when they moved into those homes that they will be at a good age of, say, 60, 65, and that house becomes mature. And where will they go?
I just want to add also that building code, people who own their homes, African Americans who own their homes and aren't don't have the money to keep their houses in pristine looking shape. Building code violations is another problem that causes them to end up losing their home property. And there are families that need to pull together in a situation like that to help that senior person remodel or do whatever's needed to upgrade, so that the code enforcer doesn't, you know, put pressure on them with a short period of time to make changes. And if they can't, then that's another way that they will lose their property.
Wow, thank you, Sylvia, for highlighting that challenge as well.
Yes.
So we are really getting close to our end, but I want to make sure that we highlight all of the questions that are in our chat. So Michelle, if you will go through the chat and share some of the questions and issues that were raised.
Yeah, we have quite a few that have come through. So Alan Mitchell had mentioned situations where property taxes could be incorrect and in turn pushing people out of their homes. In what ways could a homeowner confirm that their property taxes are correct?
I'll take that one. Call Debbie Atkins at Greenville County.
Yeah.
Alan and I have talked about this, and Alan put it perfectly. People need to take homeowners need to take responsibility for verifying the correctness of their property tax bill. The people at the county, me, although I'm not the property tax person, we work for you. You call up that tax office, have them go through it line by line. The biggest thing I've seen happen is the loss of homestead exemption. Homestead exemption is for people of a certain age and up, and it can be taken away through just various changes inadvertently. And it's a matter of applying back for it, and it's not a problem to get back, but call the county tax office. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, and Alan, I'm sorry if I jumped in, 2020 is an assessment year, a reassessment year. So the county relooks at property value for taxation every 5 years. And it's on the 5th, it's on 2010, 2015, 2020. Brace yourself, it's this year. How will COVID impact that? I don't know, but I wish we'd had a messaging leading up to this year to say it's coming. I don't know how COVID's gonna affect it, but it's a pretty safe assumption that in the absence of COVID, everybody's is gonna go up. I just can't see properties going down, so.
But I also realize there is a clause that states if you are over 65, your property tax cannot increase more than 5%. there is a clause in the city laws.
But there are all kinds of breaks that you can get. But what Dorothy and I were talking about is that each homeowner needs to take full responsibility for their own tax bill. Don't just get your tax bill and pay it. Don't just get your reassessment notice and say, oops, it's going up. Take a look at it. See what is going up, what is impacting that. And if you don't agree with it, challenge it. The people who are at the county offices are there to listen to you, and you have the right to challenge. If you don't think it's right and you have some sound basis for it, present that sound basis. Don't be afraid.
And
Thank you.
I'm amazed at the number of people who don't flip that tax notice over and read on the back about the homestead exemption and let their parents, their grandparents who are 64 know about that and go apply for it the year before they turn 65 so that they can get that lower rate. And they only allow you, I think, 3 years past 65. If you've been paying the regular rate and you became 65 and didn't know about the homestead, and they will give you some of that money back, but after 3 years, they don't.
Right.
Just a little known fact.
Thank you for pointing out all of these details that we need to be aware of. And of course, the point that we need to make sure that we ask questions if we are unsure about something. Michelle.
In recent years, they mail out. In recent years, I think starting about 3 years ago, they start mailing out announcement with your tax notice that lets you know that you are reaching homestead age. It just started notifying people.
Oh, excellent. Michelle?
Yeah. So Peggy had asked like for like general immediate solutions and practices we can do to slow down gentrification process. And, you know, some cities have established tax zones to help kind of stabilize changes. So things that citizens advocate for. And it sounds like we have a lot of things, you know, specific to certain situations. It might be nice if we could compile these afterwards as we go along. At least that's like, you know, in addition to that. So if anyone has an initial reaction to that, otherwise I can move on to another question too. And
so I'm Tina from Greenville Housing Fund, and just some of the things that everyone's speaking about tonight, rather listen more than talk, but just to let you know, we have a city and county-wide strategic plan coming out addressing a lot of the issues, heiress property, homestead exemption, not really covering enough people. And in terms of slowing the gentrification process, the biggest thing we can do is to invest in affordable housing. And the land banking that was mentioned, that's exactly how we have a project coming up in Nicholtown with affordable home ownership. So I just want to reiterate that and hope that we can all connect with you afterward to make sure that we have a good, you know, citizen engagement for this epically huge crisis really that we're facing, even more so with COVID. And we'd love to have every one of you part of the process.
Thank you, Tina.
Alicia, I'd like to pivot just a little bit because we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about gentrification, but we also have Nona Henderson on the line, and she is with Habitat for Humanity, which is another organization that helps to provide affordable housing. And if we could just give Nona a minute to say something about Habitat so that anybody on the line who's interested in getting a house will know what to do.
And Alan, we actually have, I think, a couple of other organizations on the line as well. So I'd love to give all of those organizations with us about the resources they have to offer. And then I think there are a couple of other questions as well. So we want to make sure that we hit at least the different questions that we have. And also remember that one of the recent articles in the newspaper also brought up the fact that evictions are on the rise, and that's most of what United Way, the 211, line is hearing about, individuals who need assistance with their rents. So with that moratorium ending and individuals still being out of work and being really put at risk because of COVID-19, that's another issue that plays a part in this whole conversation about sustainable and safe housing for everyone.
Well, thank you, Alan, for inviting me today. I'm Nona Henderson. I'm not sure why my screen is saying Jennifer Farner. That's my boss, but I am Nona Henderson. I'm director of our neighborhood revitalization program, and we are currently working on a development in Nicholtown, as Tina mentioned, with some different organizations who are focused on affordable housing. That development construction has been pushed back due to COVID, but we're still expecting to go in and build 3 to 4 bedroom affordable homes. We encourage everyone to let anybody you know who's interested in pursuing homeownership, may have been dragging their feet, has some questions, to get applications in. While we can't guarantee anyone that they will be in that specific development, we can. It definitely increases your chances if you get your application in. So the earlier, the better. Our process takes about 12 months. Our family services team will walk you through that process. And we also have, I know one of the points that was brought up today was keeping our houses up to code, especially for seniors. And we do have a home repair program as well that is for homeowners. So if you know someone who has been in their home for at least 2 years and been a homeowner, living in that home for at least 2 years, who has a health or critical repair that they need, to please also apply for our home repair program. And we're able to come in as long as it addresses health or safety. So roofing, lamps, HVACs, that list is pretty long. To get those applications in, our home repair program is just getting ramped back up. They took a break due to COVID, but we're constantly applying for grants, block grants specifically, so that we can go into neighborhoods and really help people stay in their homes. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Habitat, we are an affordable housing association. We build homes. Specifically, that's our main point. But my program specifically focuses on building relationships with neighborhoods and supporting neighborhoods in however way we can, and also getting the word out about our different programs. So we do have some applications available at the Nicholtown Community Center. Both home repair and home ownership applications are available. And also we encourage you guys, as we get out there in the year, I think we pushed Nicholtown to 2021, 2022, to come out and help us build those homes. We love having volunteers. There's nothing better than having the community come together to build something. And we're expecting to have about 20 homes. So we really want to encourage you guys to apply, let everybody know, especially about our home repair program, so that we can keep people in their homes. And if you guys have any ideas, any events, or anything that Habitat can help support, please do not hesitate to contact me. Mr. Mitchell has my contact information, and it's also available, as well as some other resources, on our website at habitatgreenville.org. And thank you guys again.
Alicia, would you like any of the applications at your building?
We would love to have those. Yes.
I will bring some by. I will.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard from the Greenville Housing Fund. I know that Tina is here with us. Do we have any other housing resources on with us today? Okay, I do want to make sure that we recognize the individuals who had questions and wanted to make additional comments. I know I saw Jalen had a comment and some information that he wanted to share. Jalen?
I'll drop it in the chat box. I know we're running out of time. I'll drop it in the chat box.
Okay. All right, Michelle, are there any other topics that we have missed?
I think and Sean might want to jump in and make sure his question was answered, but talking about programs to help folks in this position to negotiate with buyers to get enough wealth to sell, purchase a home in Nicholtown, or programs to upgrade their homes, which Habitat obviously just shared one of those. And then another question about the land bank situation with Sterling, which we mentioned, but if we have time, maybe talking more about that. And then the last question that I saw was, who do we contact about having the We Buy Homes signs removed?
I saw that. Who was that? Who posted that question? Susan? I saw.
Yes.
Those annoy me to no end, and they are all over Nicholtown. They are all over everywhere, and they are illegal. If they are in the city right of way, well, they're either in the city right of way or they're on someone's property. So if they're on your property, and it's not yours, take it down. But if it's in the city right of way, and I hesitate to say this because you can call Greenville Cares, and I'll put that number in the chat box. But if you don't see, and the city will pick them up. But if you don't see a response to that timely enough for you, let's give it 10 days, then contact me directly or contact Ken Gibson. By the way, Councilmember Gibson was on the call earlier. He had to go to another one, but he's the district representative for Nicholtown. But between the two of us, we'll get it taken care of. They're really over the top. I mean, just terrible, 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 terrible. By the way, that's true for political signs too. Don't put them in the right of way. So the Greenville Cares number is, well, let me just put in the chat box so you have it. But that's our city response for that. Okay. But again, if you don't see them gone in 10 days, reach out to me and I'll see if I can weigh in and get them. Do not pull them up yourself though. Don't do that yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any other comments that we need to highlight?
Unless, yeah.
just
the only other thing I see was if we want to talk more about, the situation with Sterling about land bank and how that might look for Nicholtown. But
so one of the things I'm not too familiar with Sterling, but I believe that St. Francis as a system collaborated with the Sterling community, and that was a big part of why that was possible. So my question for the Nicholtown community is, has some relationship been established with those big partners and big resources like Prisma, for example, that would allow a situation like land banking happen for Nicholtown?
I think we may have someone who is a part of the Sterling Trust. Is there someone who's on the board or has worked with the Sterling Land Trust?
I was a part of Live Well Greenville, who paid for the classes for the land trust partners to attend to learn how it's done, so that they could do it more efficiently. But other than that, I did not attend the classes.
Okay. Thank you, Yvonne. And
I've been working with James Thompson, who's over the land trust, if you want me to share his contact information.
that would be wonderful.
Sure.
We can follow up after this. So we are taking a lot of the comments and the concerns that have been brought up. I know that Alan has his desire, and Alan, you may want to speak to this yourself about some ongoing educational opportunities for the community that you'd like to see. And based on some of the feedback that we're getting from this event, I think that there are couple of topics that continue to come to the top, surface to the top. One around taxes, being concerned and understanding education around that, and of course estate planning, as well as again looking bringing back to affordable housing and how we can provide more affordable housing in the community as a discussion.
Absolutely, and this goes back to what Dorothy and I were talking about before. Keep what you have. Learn how to keep what you have. And a lot of people think the will is everything. The will is important, but it's not everything. There are all kinds of processes you can go through now to put things in place so that you can maintain your property and keep your property and your family. One of the things that I would like to do in the future is talk about estate planning and establishing a life estate on your property, so that once the property owner is deceased, the property does not have to go through probate. It's already transferred. You don't have those probate court fees. You don't have the extra taxes, extra money coming out of your pocket. And there are many other topics that we can talk about, the heirs property. But if we can just find ways to keep what we have and take advantage of the programs that are out there, like the homestead exemption program, so you can get your 2% rollback, that's the way to really go.
Thank you, Alan.
I just want to add something too, that this gentrification thing, developers now have gotten really, really smart and are able now to find your cell phone number, call you by cell phone, I want to buy your house, call your home number, I want to buy your house. And I've always said that's harassment when they're brazen enough to do that. So if we could get people to understand that all they have to do is hang up the phone and not listen, or if they want to listen and they make an offer to the buyer of what they'd like to receive for their home, that will usually get them to hang up. So it's a two-way thing that you got to be smart about, but the harassment has really gotten really, really bad lately.
True.
I just want to point that out.
Thank you, Sylvia. That's a very good point. We do have another resource on the line. I'm not sure if she is still here, but Denise, who is a realtor and also a part of an association that I believe brings another element to this around home ownership. They, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and their House in the Car program. So Denise, if you are here and want to share about the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and about the history of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers.
Yes, thank you. I will share. And I turned my camera off because I was preparing dinner for the family. But I am a realtor with the Greater Greenville Association of Realtors, but I also serve on the Upstate Realtors Association, which is a local chapter of NARAB, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. It was formed in 1947 to advocate for democracy in housing. Our chapter is a new chapter. We're a baby chapter, and we're working in the community, trying to educate on home ownership resources in terms of down payment assistance, and just trying to dispel some of the myths of needing a 20% down payment or needing a 700 credit score. So we do have different workshops, estate planning, wills, probate. We've, some of our efforts have been dampened this year with COVID, because I think for many of the people that we're trying to reach, it's more effective in person as opposed to video or Zoom. And our program, as you mentioned, the House in the Car, is targeted toward millennials, and to teach them, educate them on make your home purchase before buying the car and getting the big car payment. Many of our millennials come out of college and we're already burdened with student loan debt. And then on top of student loan debt, they want to get the car, and not just a car to get from point A to point B, but many of us get caught up in buying that luxury car. So what would be our mortgage payment, now we're making that payment in the car, on the car. So between car payment, between student loan, they can't afford a mortgage payment. The average sales price in Greenville is $235,000. And many people can, as you guys know, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, they cannot afford a $235,000 mortgage payment. So we're here to educate and advocate for the community. So I'm thankful to be on the call tonight, and hopefully I can link up with some of you. Some of you I already know, and I've met you and serve on various committees with you. But those of you that I don't, I look forward to meeting with you and interacting with you going forward.
Thank you, Denise, for sharing about that initiative. And I know that Community Works also supports that initiative. I am not sure if someone from Greenville Human Relations was able to join us today. I think we had a couple of Greenville Human Relations staff members sign up for today, but that is another wonderful organization that's focused on education, so that individuals are able to acquire assets and build wealth. So we thank you all for being with us, and we're going to go ahead and begin closing out, but we want to also highlight that this conversation really is just a springboard for what will be many. As we know, this is a huge issue that is not just a challenge in Nicholtown, but around Greenville and quite frankly around the country. And so with Nicholtown's gifts and talents and all of the many people who have over the years risen to the occasion, I do believe that Nicholtown will be able to identify solutions that will work for this community. And over the next couple of months, we hope to be a part of the continued discussion on housing and the impacts of gentrification, as well as the solutions for providing additional affordable housing, as well as making sure individuals know what their rights are, as well as understand how they can become homeowners and begin to acquire and build wealth. As we know that over our history, there has been inequality, but it's getting even more marked as the decades have gone by. So we definitely want to change that direction in the opposite direction. So at this time, I do want to talk about some of the upcoming events we have. We are planning a voter education open house. So on September 29th, that's the next open house that Sustaining Way will host. We will be doing a session on voter education. We also have an ongoing effort through South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light, one of our programs called Your Vote Matters that targets youth and young adults. And the campaign really brings in all of the many things that young people typically are thinking about, including rent and some of the other topics that many young adults are faced with and feel are important. We also have our open house, our garden service days, and we hope that you will join us if you are interested in getting out into the garden and learning more about growing your own food and about how you can become an organic gardener, as we highlight several different practices at Sustaining Way. And then also on Thursdays, if you will share with your friends, family members, anyone who needs and can benefit from free meals, hot meals, as well as free produce. Every Thursday we partner with Project Host and with other community members to provide meals and masks on Thursdays between 12:30 and 1:30. We want to thank you for attending. And before we close out, we have a virtual walkthrough that Rick is going to provide for us. And we also have a survey, I believe. So if we have that survey, if we can cue that up so that everyone can let us know what they thought about today's conversation. So just a couple of questions. You should see it on your screen now. If you will please complete the quick survey for us. And then we will transition into our virtual walkthrough.
Alyssa, I'm going to drop in the chat for those that want to sign up for our newsletter. If you're not on the newsletter, I was going to go ahead and drop that in the chat for everybody. Link. If you're not on our newsletter, so you can keep track of what we have going on, we'd love for you to sign up for that as well.
Thank you. We're going to give everybody just 1 more minute.
I'm not able to get my marks in the circles.
Sylvia, if you want to.
It's not doing.
Okay, if you want to put your responses in the chat box, that's another way that you can
Okay.
answer. We will be sharing a lot of the comments. We'll also have the video recording from today. So if you are attending, we hope that you will sign up again for our newsletter, because that's how you can get the recording from today. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close out our poll and transition to our virtual walkthrough.
While you're pulling that up, do you need me to introduce? You got it?
Yes.
Okay, so this will be, we put together a quick virtual walkthrough a couple of weeks ago, and we're actually planning on improving this. So it's a little rough, but it'll give you since this is, we used to do these on site until COVID, and now we're doing them virtual, which has been a blessing, to be honest. It's been great to be able to have the number of people we've been able to have attend, but we wanted to be able to show you around the site. And so this is a quick 7-minute video that shows you around the site. And unfortunately, it's got all me in the video right now. We're going to try to get more people included in the video in the future, but for time, I just did the whole thing. So. All right, Alicia, I'll let you take it.
Okay. And I am having trouble starting the video.
Okay. Let me see if I can get it. All right. I've got it. Let me, I will share my screen. Oh. Of course, it would change my screen as soon as I pull it up. There we go. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Wave if you can see. All right, looks like you can.
Welcome to Annie's House by Sustaining Way, here located in the Nicholtown community in Greenville, South Carolina. My name is Rick Joy. I'm the founder of Sustaining Way. We're excited to have the opportunity to show you around today. First, what we do. So Sustaining Way empowers individuals and communities to cultivate a sustainable and equitable future. We do this through education, collaboration, and workforce and people development. Ultimately, we're striving to build a thriving, sustainable community and environment. So what does that mean? It means that we are empowering youth, adults, and organizations to implement practices and strategies, including systems change and activism that will improve their lives and the lives of their children and grandchildren. Welcome to Annie's House. We're going to go ahead and go in. Let me show you around. For us, it's really practical. It's about caring for people, including providing for people's basic needs, caring for the environment, and then affordability. It has to be affordable. If you take any of one of those legs away, then we're really setting ourselves up, our communities up for failure. We work in 6 areas. We break sustainability down into 6 areas. Those 6 areas are food and landscape, energy and energy efficiency, waste and consumption, environmental sustainability, social sustainability. So all those areas, and healthy lifestyles. All those areas are areas that we work in within the community, and we educate and demonstrate here. So Amy's House, the site itself, we purchased the site back in 2011, and the site was really an eyesore for the community, and thankfully with a lot of community partnerships, we've been able to build it into an asset for the community. And so you can see the pictures that show what the site looked like. The site was really overgrown, used often as a dump site for the community, and so we did a lot of cleanup to begin with. But the home that was on site was also falling in. We were able to salvage it and use a lot of the materials actually back into the home here itself, including the flooring within the home. We salvaged and repurposed it here in the home. We also used the paneling that was in the home, and that we used it to build a chicken coop. So really all this was done with a lot of community partnerships, and too many to really name, but really took the whole community to be able to do this. The home was built to be highly energy efficient. So this is a SIP. This is a cutout of a SIP. A SIP is a structural insulated panel. And we use SIPs because it's much more energy efficient. It costs a little bit more on the material side of things, but the home actually goes up extremely quickly. So all of the walls in the home went up in one day. We were also able to use community members to be able to construct the home. So they were able to participate in the actual construction of the home, which was awesome. So it's a very simple process. It's almost like Legos going up. So it's a pretty neat process. As we were designing the home, our target was really to achieve 50% energy savings from the home, so reducing our energy bills by 50% versus what a normal home would be, and we were able to do that. That was without any solar or anything. And then with adding the solar on top, a couple years ago we added solar. We're now net zero. So net zero, when we talk about net zero means that you're at least producing as much energy as you're consuming. And so we're producing in most months more energy on site than we're consuming. So we talked about we reused the floors that were from the original home, and we were able to reinstall those and repurpose those. A lot of the things in the home, several of the things in the home, we were able to work with local businesses, and that's something really anybody can do, but to use salvage materials. So in this case, all the countertops and the countertops in the bathrooms, the flooring, all were salvaged from jobs with some of our partners where they had torn out and were redoing homes and businesses. And so we reused some of those materials back within the home. So the countertops are reused, all the flooring, all the countertops in the bathrooms are all salvage materials. So one of the things obviously in your home that's an important feature is water usage. And so making sure that you're minimizing your water usage is both good for the environment and good for your pocketbook. So one of the features we have here is a dual flush toilet, one for solids and one for liquids. And so you're able to reduce the amount of water usage. And of course, all of our water fixtures or fixtures in the home are also low flow as well. So that helps reduce the water usage on. So this is our mixed use area at Annie's house, and we really use it as a mixed use. So you can see we have produce down here. We will do seed starts in here. We do education in here with the big screen TV, and we have chairs that we'll pull out. We actually have lockers on this backside for our youth program that they can store their materials. So really we use it for a lot of different things down here. So we're in the backyard of Annie's house. Behind us we have the chicken coop. So we have chickens on site that provide us eggs on the site. We also, you can see, this is a demonstration site. So it's really, mostly we're focused on education. You see the terraces. So we have a variety of ways to grow. And so we have terraces. We have traditional row gardens. We also have raised beds in the back as well. We have a food forest in various areas, and it's kind of dispersed throughout the landscape. We also have composting on site. So we have a 3-bin compost here. And so everything that all of our food waste either goes to the chickens or we compost it. It's our centerpiece of our landscape. We felt that we needed to, we've worked with 2 different artists in the community to be able to come up with this. We had actually neighborhood individuals that came and actually built the pedestal, and we had an artist that put in the tile pieces that you see here. And these tile pieces, so we had community youth that made drawings. We had over 60 drawings that were submitted from youth in the community, and we gave them a quote. The quote was from George Washington Carver: "Where there is no vision and there is no hope." And they also researched about Sustaining Way and Annie's House and what we were about, and they made drawings from that. And so four of those drawings were selected, and those were then transferred here by the artist to the tiles. And so you see one of them here from George Washington Carver, and then all four sides have a different picture from youth. But again, this is really what we're about, is providing a vision for the community, and really for the broader world, on what a sustainable future looks like, how we can get there, how we can make our communities better, both for now and in the future.
Y'all want to watch that again?
Welcome to Annie's House by Sustaining Way, here located in the Nicholtown community in Greenville, South Carolina.
All right. One more time for everybody, right? All right. Well, thank y'all. I appreciate it. Hopefully that was helpful. We're gonna dress that up a little bit more coming up, but we at least have something for you.
Thank you. Yes, Yvonne was clapping. Thank you for doing that, because yeah, it was a very hot day.
Yeah, you can see I was sweating. We were outside for a while,
outside and
trying to dodge
cars.
Cars kept coming by, and so you got all the noise from the cars there. So
hopefully you'll come and visit when we are able to have people come into the house again. And again, we wish the best for all of you. We hope that you and your families continue to stay safe. And we look forward to continuing the conversation about gentrification and housing. And we really only started a conversation. There's so much for us to talk about, but also so many opportunities. So thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Alan. Thank you also, Jalen. I think Jalen had to sign out, as well as DJ, who I think also had to sign out. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, resources, community resources, for being a part of this conversation as well. And I noticed that there were several people who were from outside of Nicholtown, but we do know, Alan especially, as well as Sylvia and some of the others who are on this call, that this is a big issue in Nicholtown. So we'll definitely make sure that we share the resources that were presented today with those who couldn't be with us today. So we hope that you will join us again September 29th for our discussion about voting, and it really ties in well with this conversation. It's a good segue. As we know, a lot of policies and practices are that really tells the story of why we are where we are. And so if we want to see things change in our communities, if we want to see more equity in our communities, then our engagement in the process is vital. And so we hope that you'll join us on the 29th to discuss how we actively engage so that policies are put into place that really create equity and justice for all of us. Thank you so much for being here.